Just take one hit. Don't you want to be cool?
Gather round everyone. The show's about to begin.
Turn on, tune in, drop out, this show's amazing. It's super lemon haze, you know them boys always blazing. Put one in the air, fill your glass and get to raising. Kirkman praising, school flag waving. Chopping up the topics as they're choking on some chronic. Scott and Eric breaking it down like 21st century prophets. Eyes glazed and minds dazed, it's knowledge they convey. Roll up and consume the super lemon haze.
Super lemon haze.
Going to ask you several questions.
Super lemon haze.
How do you feel?
I feel like a slice of butter melting on top of a big old pile of flapjacks. Yeah.
Have Mike Crawford coming in today. Mike Crawford from the Young Jerks, and I connected with him earlier in the week because I was commenting on one of Shailene's posts, and he just connected with me through DMs, which is why I love this fucking technology, because otherwise I think we never would have met, or maybe it would have been a long time from now. And we hit it off, and I did a little bit of digging into this guy's past because, as you said, Scott, he's got a huge body of work, so he's been probably producing materials for years on years. I mean, I think he started his podcast at least like 5 years ago. So, I mean, and even before that, he was doing a lot of activism.
He was on radio. He was on radio in 2000. I mean, I'm seeing stuff as far back. I mean, he's got podcasts recorded from radio in 15, 16. So, I mean, and tons of articles, tons of research. He's got a lot going on.
Yeah. So we're going to dig into that. But first thing we're going to get to is that motherfucker had one of Kirk's biggest enemies on, and so we're going to address that as soon as we possibly can. All right, here we roll. Mike, you there?
Yes, I am.
Excellent. You sound good.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get going.
So you're I'm guessing you're Eric.
I'm Eric. And this is Scott. Yeah.
I'm Scott.
So Mike, you and I started communicating with each other, and then I just decided obviously to do some research, which is the appropriate thing to do before we have someone on the show, is probably what you do. And I'm looking through all your stuff, and right away, the first thing that just jumped out at me was that you had Brian Riccio on your show. And, the one thing about Kirk is that I think, I've been a fan of his for a long time, but at least in the last 8 to 9 or 10 months since he started this podcast, he has probably named these 4 enemies multiple times, so much so that I think he's sort of ingrained it onto the mini fans' heads. But he talks about like Shirley Young, who's basically from the Boston Globe, John Henry from the Red Sox, Bob Murchison, who's like that troll who you know about, and then Brian Riccio.
And then Kevin Cullen.
And actually, I should name the 5th, Kevin Cullen. But
the
I guess
Globe, yeah. The Globe, that's just in the Globe, I guess. You're right.
Yeah, it's in sort of that Globe family. And I don't think Kevin Cullen is so much an enemy as much as he just, I think Kirk is the one that called him out on his shit and got him suspended. So I think he's sort of a person in sort of one of the characters in his world, but not like an enemy. And
that's
Brian,
right. Yeah.
So I saw you and Brian Riccio kind of shooting this shit on your channel. So can you just give us a little bit of a backstory between what's your relationship with Brian and how that evolved and why he was on your show?
It's difficult for me because I haven't, I almost don't want to comment at all, probably very similar to Kirk. I'm not.
I don't think Kirk would have a problem commenting. He's done a lot. He said a lot. I don't think he's afraid to say.
But you know how when Kirk talks about him, says I shouldn't even talk about this guy.
Yeah,
that's kind of the way I feel because it's like I'm not communicating with him. At one time, I considered him my friend.
Yeah.
He reminded me. I lost my best friend I can't even remember 5-6 years ago. Michael Malta, Italian guy, and Brian reminded me of him.
Mm-hmm.
So.
In what way? Just that he was just
Italian, very, there's 2 sides of Brian. I think people, I understand why many fans are upset, That's pretty much, similar reasons why I don't have contact with Brian. I wouldn't dox someone's family, wife, kids.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff he says, I think it goes too far.
Yeah.
But I see another side of him though too.
Yeah.
You know, I saw both sides. He's the type of person. When I had the flu a few years ago, he came out and made sure I had some medicine. You know, like he's that kind of friend. But
Yeah.
he's also got some issues.
Yeah.
So you know, at one point, definitely I fed into that, you know, feud with Kirk, with Brian. But, you know, for me, a lot of them, you know, my recommendations to Riccio, I told him not to go on Kirk's show. I told him that was going to happen. He said, Kirk's going to destroy you.
Yeah.
You know, and exactly what happened. So,
Yeah.
you know, you can't control Brian Riccio. He is his own person. And I understand why people are mad at him. I totally get it. So, you know, one of the things I came around, you know, even talking to MHB, you know, we don't agree politically at all on anything, but I like MHB. I think he's a good guy, and we've had some conversations. You know, I guess, you know, I at one point I did come around to, you know, I think I was one of the people that kind of put the final nail in Bob Murchison, besides the little rally you guys did after that, which was pretty awesome and funny at the same time. But the Murchison thing, and the more I looked into it, the more I was just like, you know, this guy it's like a one-man vendetta. That's the way I feel like it.
I actually really, because that was the thing. So I watched your show or your interview or your discussion with Brian Riccio, and it was definitely like similar to the same tone that he was holding. It was very sort of anti-Kirk and whatever. And then, you know, I followed it up because obviously then I'm scrolling up and I see the Bob Murchison interview. You actually did 2 shows, and your tone really changed. And I actually really liked and appreciated what you said. I don't know if you want to explain that, but you really did mention about activism, and I did want to ask you about that, because it does seem like that is something, or how you define at least what you do and who you are. I mean, you called yourself, what'd you call yourself? Activism Jesus or something?
Yeah, I was ripping on Kirk a little bit because I like that podcast Jesus. I mean, that is who Kirk is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So for me, that's kind of like, you know, just ripping on Kirk.
Yeah.
The Young Jerks is obviously a rip on the Young Turks. You know, we're the local jerks. We're not trying to be
right.
I don't even like the Young Turks, honestly.
Yeah.
But you know,
so can you talk about that then? So what did you see in Bob Murchison that sort of changed that?
It's a one-man show.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when I do activism, it's not just me. You know, you have to have a community behind you. This is like one guy just deciding and going. You know, that's not activism. Yeah. You know, it's supposed to be
harassment. It's harassment, basically.
That's it. It's a one-man harassment campaign. So
it's stalking and harassing.
And especially when Kirk left EEI, like arguably you could say, okay, Murchison, it's public airways, FCC. If you go that line, I'm not saying I go that way, but I could see, you know, a rationale for it. But once he left EEI, it's like you have to seek out Kirk Minahan on Barstool Sports.
Yeah.
You know, so what's the issue at this point? And and listening to some of the stuff that Kirk was doing and coming around, it seemed like Kirk kind of got some of the issues. Like, to me, that would, like any campaign I've ever done, right? It's like the carrot and the stick. You know, and once someone kind of comes around to you and wants you do the meeting. Kirk was offering a lot, and he didn't. It wasn't about the cause anymore. It was about Bob wanting to ruin Kirk.
A personal vendetta. Like
and I've had that done to me too. So you know, I don't like it. There's some things I really love. Like Kirk is like that. He goes. I like that he ruined Colin. I like that he went after the Globe. I like that he went after the Red Sox. I like that now. You know, I could say this now because, you know, people may not know this, but my girlfriend worked at Entercom a long time. She was at AAF, Bay State Rock with Carmelita. So, you know, that's gone, and AAF is gone. And, you know, looking back, and I don't like Entercom either. So, you know what I mean? Like, I don't think they're good people. I think that Kirk actually has made some good enemies and done some good work and taken some people down that really kind of deserve to get taken down. So, you know, I feel the same way about a lot of these media Chardonnay drinkers. Like, they look down at someone like me, and I'm just like, what?
I was excited to have you on was because, you know, we have a lot of stuff going on right now with like big marijuana. And I was trying to explain this in a podcast or two ago, but so there's 2 main groups, right, that can apply and own and run a business in the state of Massachusetts, right? And that's the Economical Empowerment group, and then there's like what are called, I guess, the MTCs, which is like the medical, what is it called? Medical treatment centers, right? Is that?
Well, technically that was for the medical side, and a lot of those have become RMDs, which is the rec side. But yes, you are correct. And then there's also a new thing called the SE, which is like economic empowerment, but they're a little different. So
how's that different? What's them about? What's?
SEs are, it's social equity. It's like a different priority, and it's different rules a little bit, and they actually have like a lot of great things happening for SE right now. So hopefully that rolled
such
out.
As what?
Like and micro. There's also micro licenses, things like that. So these are kind of the smaller players.
Yeah.
And they're going to allow them to do delivery only.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of be the first ones to have the monopoly on that. And basically, where if you're a micro grow, you can deliver your own product and you can wholesale and deliver for other people. The micro applicants have like a limited square foot, how much they can grow. And I'm not the guy to be like, my buddy Grant Smith knows every detail of everything because he's home all the time. He's so passionate. Like, mostly I'm running a business when they're having those meetings. So I don't keep up with that stuff quite as much. I'm not an applicant, but I kind of follow it. I get it. And basically the micro guys, they're smaller. I mean, they're just they're not these giant grows that you see from like New England Treatment Access, or what you're talking about, the MTC RMDs. Like those guys are corporate cannabis. Those are the big boys.
Yeah.
And so it's a different licensing cost too as well. It's a lot cheaper to be a micro applicant. Mm-hmm. So the Cannabis Control Commission has set up programs for other people to try to get into the industry that won't be as costly, less cost, but of course it's still cost intensive. It's still a long time to get approved.
There was a court case between a big and a small company, or actually no, it was the city of Cambridge versus basically big marijuana.
Big marijuana sued the city of Cambridge. That's what happened. Revolutionary Clinics sued.
Right, but it was brought on because the city of Cambridge wanted to give an advantage to the smaller companies or the smaller growers or the micro growers to get a head start, basically. So they wanted to give them an opportunity to get into the business, a 2-year window. Revolutionary Clinics sued the city and won, right? Initially, they won, and then recently there was a reversal of that order. So the appeal, the city of Cambridge appealed the decision, and in turn they won.
Correct. But at the same time, Revolutionary Clinics is vowing to continue the lawsuit, so it's not quite over. But I think it is. I mean, it seems to be. We'll see. I mean, Rev Clinics has a lot of money. Yeah. And they're relentless, so we'll see what happens. But it seems like, the higher court ruled that Cambridge was right, that they could do this within the law.
Yeah. I mean, the interesting thing about that case, real quickly, that I think is interesting is that because of the whole COVID thing, no one would be opening up that business anyway, right? Because we're talking recreational dispensaries. So, and the clock started when the lawsuit, when the initial decision was filed, right? So we're talking, by the fall, a year has already passed. And,
correct.
And so that's almost like a huge advantage to Revolutionary Clinics.
Yep. And, I think even the city councilors and the people pushing for economic empowerment knew that kind of, even before the COVID. Just, it's almost like they're not even, in a way, they're almost not even saying that SE or EE is going to get an advantage. It's going to be equal footing. Yeah. The difference is the RMDs are already set up. They already have everything in place. Yeah. So they can just apply and they open like immediately, basically. Yeah. Where these SEs and EEs, it takes 2 years on average. Mm-hmm. So what they're saying is like, we're basically going to let them all open at the same time, practically. I mean, some SEs and EEs might get open first, but it doesn't give the first advantage to the big boys. Yeah. So is the reason why the big boys have the advantage because it's just basically plug and play? Like they already have the money, they got the resources, they've got the whole format. The biggest thing is having the location, like the location, and to have everything else set up too. You're right. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if we're talking in a place like a city of Cambridge, I can't imagine what the rent is, and they're not. The landlords aren't giving these groups a break, are they? No, it's like when you go to the VFW hall, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you can rent it for $1,000." Then you say it's a wedding, and it's 10. Yeah, exactly. Same thing with cannabis. It's like it's 10 times as expensive on
Because of the
everything.
liability, or
I think they just think it's a gold rush.
yeah,
You know, people are like, everyone's getting rich on this. Let's just, and I think it's also the stigma. There's
yeah,
still a stigma around it, you know?
right.
So,
We
Yeah,
talk.
there's pieces to it, right? There's the gold rush piece, and there's a ton of infrastructure too. You got cameras, cop detail, traffic patterns. I mean, there's a big piece to it.
there is
I'm
a
guessing
lot
it
of paperwork,
can't
a
be
lot
any
of planning.
can't be any old building, right? So I'm sure everybody's like, this is going to be a big pain in the ass, and they're making money. Great, let's go ahead and just run that right on up.
Let's
Yeah,
do a parking plan, a parking study, let's,
right,
you know,
right.
all that stuff.
So, Mike, you wanted to come on because you recently produced an article, right? It was
Yeah.
a kind of almost of an investigation, right? Because you did something a couple of years ago, and then you followed that up with a newer article that it's in Dig, right?
Yes, Dig
Dig
Boston. And we
Tell-
also have a website now too, midnightmass.substack.com.
Okay, great. So tell us about what you found out, what you were looking into, and what were some of the results, some of the findings.
It's New England Treatment Access is the dispensary we're looking at. 2 years ago, I put out a story, is there moldy cannabis in Massachusetts? And it was basically a bunch of employees had started complaining from NETA about the working conditions, about mold being in the grow, and just a lot of crazy allegations. But I found this one woman, Ann Hassel, who, you know, a lot of the employees at NETA back then anyways, they were afraid. They would talk to me, you know, on Facebook, but they were like, don't use my name. You know what I mean? They would talk to me on the phone.
Were they afraid of what prosecution or getting fired? What was their
Multiple
concern?
things. Being blackballed from the industry, number one.
One of the only games in town at the time, so you don't have a job with Neta, you probably don't have a job in cannabis. Yeah.
And even the next job too, you know, it's kind of a small town. Everyone's worried, you know, are they going to hire me if I'm the person blowing the whistle at my former employer, you know?
Right.
So it's word of mouth travels. A lot of these people were ex-employees. That's pretty much all of them. But Ann Hassel had all the documentation.
Can you tell us who's Ann?
She used to work at NETA. And Ann was someone that went like above and beyond. She did, you know, testing. She tested herself. She called OSHA. There was a paper trail, and she documented everything. So when I started talking to her, she just sent me everything, and it was just like I was just shocked, like what I was seeing and finding, and it was already backed up by all those other people off the record, and there were a couple other people speaking publicly on Facebook. So, you know, put it together, and we had a story, and we knew it, and we just compiled it, and we put it out,
And Mike, just to be clear, you had photo evidence of actual moldy buds and poor conditions in these grows. You had actual photo.
I would say that she did, yeah. She definitely had, you know, there are photographs out there,
Evidence.
and even like if you look on Reddit, Boston Trees, you'll see a lot of that stuff too.
So what happened? So you wrote the article. You had some pretty good sources, some strong evidence, and then you published it. And what was the result?
Well, you know, right when we were about to publish it, NETA got back to us.
Before or after?
Right before we put it out.
Oh, how did they know? How did they know you were doing it?
Well, we contacted them. We always ask
you
for
try to
comment.
get them on record?
Yeah, and they
Yeah.
actually, you know, did get back to us. And one of the things that there were, this gentleman named Greg, he talked about how they were dunking, like there was so much mold on the buds, they would dunk it in hydrogen peroxide.
Shit.
And so, you know, they put out some statements in that article, and then later on Boston Reddit Trees, they kind of changed their story a little bit. And they lied. You know, I found them lying a lot. And, you know, also in that story, when I looked at it 2 years ago.
Wait, did your story ever make it to more of like a mainstream network, or was it just stayed with?
That was what drove me crazy.
Yeah. And did you send it to other people? You
back then was acting like I was making it up or something. It was like, what?
Yeah. So did you try to connect with some larger networks, and no one wanted to pick it up?
No, nobody would touch it. Like, do you see why I'm with Kirk on that? It's like there's major story here, and you won't touch it because why?
Yeah.
Because I pissed you off on Twitter or something. Like,
yeah.
Like, what is it? I don't get it. And you know, it's not a crazy story. It makes so much sense when you look into it and look at the details. And the other part that really bothered me about New England Treatment Access and the whole situation is, you know, we interview on the Young Jerks. We interview a lot of politicians.
Yeah.
They come through, and even I pointed out to them, they were aware of it. None of them would touch it. And when I'm researching this story, I'm really realizing how politically connected Netta was locally, and who started the company is this guy named Howard Kessler. He has a son named David Kessler. They're billionaires. They're billionaire philanthropists in Boston. They've recently sold the business to another billionaire we can talk about. But back then it was them, and they're I'm pretty sure he's a Democrat, because he gave money to everybody. You look around, and this guy's on a level where he had a place at Mar-a-Lago. He was friends with Trump and Clinton.
Did you ever get him online? Did you ever talk to him directly?
No.
Right, so you wrote the story 2 years ago, and between 2 years ago and today, what happened?
Nothing.
Yeah,
except the company got sold to another. A guy named Wrigley from the Wrigley Field and
sure.
Chewing gum.
Yep.
He that's who it's like the Wrigley Air. He owns it now. All Wrigley. Company's called Parallel, and it got worse. Yeah. That's what it actually got worse. Like that's what kills me over the last 2 years. And I was taking it to the DPH, CCC, just like Ann Hassel. She's called everybody.
Yeah.
And now, right during a COVID-19, there's an outbreak at Netta. The Boston Globe reports on it.
Yeah, there was 2 employees that were testing positive, right? And they were at different locations though, right? They weren't at the same. And it was in the retail, or was it in the dispense, like the growing area?
I know, one of them was in Franklin. I think that was really the kind of the focus, because Franklin's where they grow the cannabis. Yeah. So we really got into what happened recently at Franklin more than anything else. Yeah. But there was, I'm pretty sure that Northampton and maybe even Brookline had some issues with COVID-19 as well.
Yeah, but didn't you say, was it it was like a pancake breakfast or something?
Yeah, that was at Franklin.
Oh, that's what it was. So that's pretty much how you think these employees got infected.
They had a buffet. I mean, in the middle
of a buffet.
Yeah, and the thing is,
after the order was passed that everyone should shutter the fuck down, these guys were having a little brunch and a buffet.
I think it was March 25th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they and it was, if you listen, because basically what I did is I brought on the 4 employees a few weeks back, and then we wrote up that story based on their interviews. And if you listen to that conversation, it was basically like a couple guys and the chefs of the place. They wanted to feed everyone. It was like a nice gesture. It was like bring people together type thing.
Yeah.
But it was handled terribly.
Yeah.
And someone that was infected came in and infected other people at that brunch. They were sharing food. They were sharing candy. Yeah. It just, and later on that day, and they didn't know that person was infected.
Yeah.
But later on that day, that person went home sick. And then that's when 3 days later, 2 days later, whatever it was, they announced that, we have an issue here at Franklin.
Yeah. So when did you... Go ahead.
Sorry, Eric, but prior to that, Mike, I was hearing too. I was listening to some of your other prior shows too. I mean, it sounds like just in general there was a PPE issue, a bit of a safety issue when it comes to equipment and things like that at Netta to begin with.
Right.
Fair to say.
This is just. I mean, you think about it, right? This company has the best packaging. You know what I mean? If you go in there, it looks so nice. It looks like Apple Store. Every time we do a story, they have a PR rep to follow up with us. They're spending money. They have money. But the guys in the trim room are sitting on broken chairs. Mm-hmm. Like every chair is broken. And you're sitting in a chair for 8 to 10 hours trimming cannabis. Like you need a good chair with a good back. You know what I mean? That's like doesn't sound like a labor intensive job, but it really is. It's a repetitive. And then they're getting sick. I mean, that's the thing that really scares the crap out of me.
So did they come and reach out to you again? How did you hook up with this second? Yeah. Well,
it's funny because I of course I emailed them. It's funny. I got to give shouts out to Chris Ferrone from Big Boston. He's my editor. He's been my champion for so long. I love him. Because I wrote the story, I sent it to him, and he's like, "Did you follow up with Netta?" And I'm like, "Oh my God, I forgot." Like, because I was so like just to get it out, and so I followed up with him. And he said, like, "Just give him till tomorrow. Give him noon. Give him a deadline at noon." And all of a sudden, this PR rep call pops up in my emails at 11:48 a.m. You know what I mean? Like 10 minutes before the deadline. I was like, "Can you give me more information about this?" And I had already linked the podcast. I had linked the other story.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like what more do you need, buddy? Like seriously. But you know, I called him up, didn't answer. He called me back. We finally had a conversation for about 5 minutes. He said, "Can you send me some more questions? I'll send to the CEO, Amanda Rosatano."
Mm-hmm.
And like one of the questions was, "How come you guys always have money for PR agents, but you can't have
Right.
shares that aren't broken?"
Yeah.
For the just basic stuff. And he's like, "You kind of took a ding at me."
Yeah.
I said, "Well, isn't that the reality, though, buddy?"
Yeah.
And of course, no, like they never came back. They on this time they haven't responded.
Yeah.
No response. The
And
only
any-
response we got is that they started dinging us on our podcast and talking trash on Reddit trees. And we think a lot of us are very suspicious where those dings are coming from, because this time around, everyone gets it. Like everyone in the community. Last time there was a lot of doubt. 2 years ago, there was doubt. People were like, I don't know. They don't want to doubt it. No one wants to. Even me. Back then, I could have done that story even a little earlier, a couple months earlier, but I didn't want to be the person dinging this thing that I love, cannabis.
Yeah.
So this time, everyone gets it. Everyone's like, wow, this is ridiculous. This is still going on.
Have you had Governor Baker on? Was that?
No. He's Baker and Walsh are the only two that will, I feel like,
never
on my show.
Yeah.
Now I'm trying to. People are asking me to apply for the CCC commission. And
Yeah.
asking Baker to appoint me. I don't know.
So, do you know them personally? Do they know you personally? Or do they just know your podcast?
Any interaction, should I say?
I don't know. Like, I think Governor Baker probably knows me at this point. I think he has to. I mean, I know he follows like my Mike Can Boston Twitter account. So I don't know. I have a feeling he knows me, but actually, I've heard things that he knows me, so I'm gonna assume he does. But I've never met the guy, not in person.
Yeah. What would you ask him if you had him on? Where would that conversation lead to?
I mean, we'll probably get into all kinds of things, but I don't hate, like, I've bashed him a lot over the years because I call him Corporate Charlie. Remember when the state trooper got killed by the guy that drove like 100 miles an hour
in the breakdown lane?
On the detail, yep.
Yeah.
That was horrible.
Yeah.
I mean,
on the turnpike, yeah.
Yeah. Officer Clarity. Well, the guy who ran into him had vendetta, by the way, which is funny. But, one of the issues was there were so few places open at that point that this guy had a sleep issue, apparently. And he drove like 100 miles each way for his cannabis. And so, this is the issue, where you're being so restrictive on it that you're sending medical patients with medical issues 100 miles to drive back and forth each way.
So it's funny. You took that story in a direction I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
You're not saying, because I thought, okay, so
no, but basically what I'm saying is like at that point there was they went after the doctor who gave this guy a medical recommendation. They took his license away. And Baker, it was all fraudulent. The whole case was fraudulent, and Baker was behind it. And he knew he was wrong, and he let this guy sit for a year without his license. And eventually he did get his license back. And that was one of the things I went after Charlie Baker so hard on, because I know this guy. He's an ER doctor. Like there was no need to put that doctor through that. It was a phony sham case.
So he was punished for giving this driver who killed the officer. Yeah. He gave him the recommendation to get his license.
Suspended his medical license.
Yeah.
So that was a perfect example of why Charlie Baker will probably never come on my show, because I went after him. This was a frame up. They basically lied. There was nurse practitioners who were allowed to recommend cannabis at that point, but the DPH hadn't set up the system to let them put him in yet. So they put him under his doctor's number because he was a head doctor at this cannabis firm. And so they basically lied and said that he had given like 5,000, and it was bull. Like everything was bull. It was a sham case.
Yeah.
And
they try to spell out that this guy was just giving anyone and everyone a license or a card to get drugs.
Wasn't even the case, because it was very similar to the whole recreation thing that we've talked about, Eric, which was, they approved medical, but then there was nowhere to actually get any medical. So as Mike was saying, you got to drive across the whole damn state just to find the one or two facilities that were open. And it just happened to be that Netta, because they were backed by some choice investors, they were one of the first ones that were opened up and happened to be there.
It's like this is what Baker probably didn't like me for, because like here I am saying like, you're the guy blaming this doctor, but you're actually the reason. Mm-hmm. You're the reason. You sent this guy 100 miles with a sleep issue, driving his car. What do you think's going to happen?
It's a little bit of a stretch, to be honest. I mean, you can't. I mean, I get it. I get what you're trying to say is that the restrictions that the government has put on the cannabis industry is causing a lot of distress, right? I mean, there's nothing more obvious than what's happened in the last like 8 weeks, right? I mean, and we've brought this up multiple times on our last probably 3 or 4 shows, but the fact that they allowed the medical marijuana dispensaries to remain open, but close all the recreationals, that really had a major effect on a lot of people's treatment, right? People who are receiving and using marijuana as a part of the treatment plan, whether it be for like, we mentioned, pain or mental health issues or whatever. And we talked about vets recently. There's that, to me, has just screamed like, this is fucking politics. There's nothing more to this, because, we've discussed too, is that like, they could have followed the exact same rules. And I think they were set up and in line to do that in terms of like, what the medical dispensaries were doing, which is like, give everyone their space and by appointment only, and, one person in, one person out kind of thing, or delivery or curbside pickup. I mean, everyone was ready and willing to do that, but the governor's like, nope, like with little to no explanation. Right.
Except he's saying it's about the out-of-state people.
Yeah.
We'll just ban out-of-state people.
Right. And that was it,
right? That could have easily been handled with the security and cop details that are at every facility. I mean, come on. I mean, that's pretty, again, I'm sure a memo, a nice, strongly worded memo would have had everybody pivoting on that pretty easily, which is what Eric and I have discussed many times. But yeah, obviously very politically driven, unfortunately.
Yeah. And to get back to, some of the topics in the beginning about big versus small cannabis. So, it sounds to me like the people when they decided to give this like, May 18th date, and this sort of phase, the phases of getting the government back up and running and open up the economy, it looked as though he assigned a board, the governor assigned a board, and then there was a number of people from the cannabis community who were responsible to come and make the case to open up the dispensaries. And I think you were vocal about that, right? So who made that crew up?
Big Cannabis.
Big Cannabis.
I mean, this is the thing. Like, Amanda Rosatano, the one woman who runs Netta, who used to be a state rep aide, a Democrat state rep aide. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is all political. That's who's gonna go talk to the Baker, Charlie Baker, about opening up rec. Yeah. The person who had a COVID-19 outbreak. She's on the cannabis advisory board for the state as the cultivation expert. She's got mold growing in her facility. She's got aphids, bugs. Like, this is they can't even sell their bud. Like, if you go to Netta, most times you go to Netta, they're wholesaling other people's products.
Yeah.
Because their product, they grow the bud and it's just so bad they have to turn it into, like, distill it. There's some good players like, Kobe Evans, Oasis, that they're open in Boston. Mm-hmm. There are some smaller places, Caroline's. There's a bunch of my friends are going to be opening very soon.
Yeah.
So, there are.
But
it's not.
You mentioned that, and I think Evans, he was the first Boston store, correct? It was in Dorchester.
First recreational store, yeah.
Yeah, it was in Dorchester. And also owned by a minority, right? Wasn't he the first African American? Yeah, exactly.
Very good guys.
Yeah, which I know I looked into those guys as well, but so they've been shut down since, I think, their store was open for like a week, right?
Exactly.
Before the whole place shut it down. Where are they at in terms of opening back up once the restrictions are released?
It looks like it's going to happen, but nobody really seems to know. And the reason why I say it looks like it's going to happen is because Netta, Netta has also a union movement going on.
Yeah, you mentioned that too.
And so they laid everyone off during this COVID-19 outbreak when recreational went away. Yeah. And of course, they've basically fired all the union people, the people that were organizing for the union, the employees. Yeah. It fired them outright, like some of the major ones. But a lot of them are getting the call back. And so Netta seems to, and some of the other dispensaries seem to think that Charlie Baker is going to lift it.
Yeah. So the people that you're saying that were let go or fired are now getting the call to get ready to come back to work.
Some were furloughed. So some of the employees were furloughed and they're coming back. They're being called back. But some were outright fired because they say COVID-19, but we think it's about the union organizing.
So obviously, if there was a union for people who are the employees of these larger corporations, you would be in favor of that?
Yes. You know, I'm not saying for every dispensary. I don't think Oasis or some of the smaller guys need a union, but for the bad players, you know, they need to pay these employees more. Number one, they're risking their lives to be there. A lot of times with the COVID-19 now, especially with the mold. But it would give them a voice. It would allow them to make sure that these things get addressed. So I definitely think that a union would help them.
Just to be clear, I think in playing devil's advocate, because I'd like you to spell it out for us. I mean, you know, talk us through why you don't think that. I mean, you know, what's the difference between them and anybody else, any other service worker?
Definitely.
I mean, I would imagine you're thinking this is UFCW, right? The food workers and the commercial food and commercial workers union, correct?
Correct.
You know, why are they any different? Why would somebody in a cannabis dispensary facility or a grow house like Nita's, why are they any different than anybody else in any other business in the state for that reason? And why aren't they protected under the state's you know, the typical state procedures of OSHA and all of these things? I'd love for you to spell that out for us.
Two parts. Make sure I don't miss a second because I like both of those questions. I guess the first part of it is I don't think they are any different in some respects, but they are different in other respects. And the reason I say that is because it's dangerous. People don't realize when you're growing that much cannabis indoors, there's risks. You know, and mold is a huge risk because when you're inhaling that mold, when you're cleaning it, you know, I have someone that had to clean the mold, clean the air conditioning, caked in mold every day. And, you know, they're supposed to have breathing apparatus, you know, equipment, and they don't have it, or they're not using it, or they're not educated on how to use it. You know, there's a lot of risk. People coming out of there with COPD. People are telling us that after 2 weeks working there, even in the trim room, like not even in the cultivation area, in the trim room, that people are sticking, you know, paper towels up their noses. They're on 5 allergy meds, and that some people can't handle it.
Mike, I'm curious, you know, obviously you're talking about some serious, you know, disabilities. I mean, like COPD is nothing to joke about. So why haven't they, at least these people who have suffered the most, why haven't they grouped together and found a lawyer and filed suit against Netta? What has that ever happened? Has that happened yet?
You know, I haven't heard that, but I would not be surprised that there are lawsuits. Like, I know that some other places there are definitely some lawsuits going on, and I don't even want to touch on that. Sometimes I don't want to burn my sources and all that, but
sure,
I would not be surprised if there are lawsuits that we don't know about. And oftentimes an attorney will say, don't talk to Mike Crawford. You know, we have a lawsuit. We don't want to screw it up. We don't want you to go on there and say the wrong thing. The other thing is covering these stories, like, you know, when they laid everyone off, they gave them a severance pay. And you only got the severance pay if you signed a non-disclosure agreement.
Oh, interesting.
So that's why, to be these employees that are speaking to me, especially the ones that are using their names like Ann Hassel and the 5 employees that I've recently interviewed, they're risking a lot. They could actually get sued by Netta. OSHA is, you know, the local OSHA, why aren't they investigating? I don't know. You know, I know in the feds, I called OSHA, the federal, you know.
Sure. Federal organization, right, yeah.
And they were like, we can't touch it because it's cannabis. It's federally illegal. You know, they had some interest when I called, but when Ann called, they had no interest.
Yeah.
When I finally followed up, they were a little scared because of, you know, I was writing a story and I'm trying to quote them and all that. But they really haven't done anything. And I think the only, you know, the Department of Labor, the Department of Health, Massachusetts, they haven't done anything. And the Cannabis Control Commission, they all that, when you call all those organizations, you know, they all say, call the Cannabis Control Commission. And they've done nothing. They actually had an investigation. This is one thing we've confirmed 100% is that with the COVID-19 outbreak, the CCC, for the first, as far as we know, for the first time, did actually investigate Netta on the COVID-19 outbreak. But we feel like, again, like it's kind of a cover-up, like that the Cannabis Control Commission doesn't want the bad press. They don't want Charlie Baker getting mad at them. They don't want, the state to get mad at them. They want to basically cover it up.
The most compelling argument towards the union is the idea that they're not federally recognized, and that's a great point, man. That's about as good as it gets right there. You're not going to recognize the cannabis industry federally. You may have a lot of states that are in bed for a lot of monetary and tax purposes, which is pretty darn clear, and we see the revenues that are happening. Why, unions in their oldest, most truest form, a bazillion years ago, working in a coal mine for some random billionaire at the time in the 1700s, this is what they were created for, and this actually might be a pretty darn good example. Great points, my friend. Thank you.
Like other cannabis companies have come around to me and said, I heard the union was looking at us, but they decided not to even mess with us because we treat our people so well.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're treating your people good,
right,
there's the employees have to decide to have a union.
Yeah.
So, it's the union's only going to focus on the bad players.
Who are the bad boys? Let's name them. So we've got Netta, obviously. And so what else? What are some of the other companies that you're investigating or looking into, or can you say that are?
I would say Rev Clinics.
Rev Clinics?
Yeah. And I don't want to get into it because there's a lot of...
Get into it. What is it?
Because I'm holding on to a lot of it. I mean, I've started to release some of it.
You're
I'll
saving
give you an example.
You gotta let Mike run his industry now here. Come on now, Eric. Hold on. Mike got to do his thing.
I'll give you a little bit. I'll give you, because...
Yeah, give us a hint.
All right. I don't know how to start with this one. There's been a lot of problems with revolutionary clinics over the years, I feel like. But, like, more recently, there was some allegations made on, again, Reddit Boston Trees. I don't know if you guys follow that. Did you ever go to Reddit Boston Trees?
I've only been there a couple times. Are you talking about the harassment?
Well, a lot of shit gets leaked on there. Like when employees are upset and something's going on, that's where they leak it. And so there was some leaking going on there from former employees about a sexual assault incident.
Yeah, right.
And I've looked into it, and the person who was had the allegations against them actually reached out to me.
Yeah, you had someone on. You had the CEO on, right?
No, I ambushed the CEO.
Oh, that's what it was.
So after I basically waited after a hearing and put a camera in his face. I did what Kirk Minihane does a lot, right?
Yeah,
chases people
you guys
around.
You guys have a lot in common.
We do. We really do. So anyways, I put a camera in this guy's face, chased him down the street, and was asking about the sexual assault allegations. And the person who had the allegations against them reached out to me, and I started looking into this company, and it's just, to me, it's just a weird company from the beginning. It started, the first public hearings for the company, back then it was called Cardiac Arrhythmia Foundation or something, Syndrome Foundation, the CAS Foundation. And the guy who spoke for them was named David Vining. And David Vining is a very wealthy man who sold a trash company in Andover, Mass. But he was also a felon, not for cannabis, for like unemployment fraud or something like that, disability fraud, some kind of weird fraud. He became a felon, and because of that, he can't run a cannabis company. So next thing you know, his wife is on, the application, and his son was the CFO or had some big title there, and he's the allegation of the sexual assault happened against. So we're looking into them. There's a lot of and I have talked to employees. I have documents. I have him texting me. He confirmed that the allegation was against him. He totally denies it. I don't, at this point, I don't believe him.
Yeah.
Even with the Rev Clinics, there's other things too that I just, in Massachusetts, there's a license limit. You're only supposed to have 3 recreational. And, one of the Vining sons is now going around buying up the Economic Empowerment SE. He's going around and saying, we're interested in buying your business. So this is like more kind of shady stuff that's going on. Like like it's getting around the license limits and They're, technically they're probably legal on it because they'll
Yeah.
say we have different owners, we're not the same people. But
Right.
this is what scares me in a lot of the stuff. It's like, who actually owns these companies?
Yeah.
CCCC doesn't really investigate that if there's secret owners and things going on shady. So
Yeah. So talk about the Cannabis Control Commission. What's your relationship with them, and what's your opinion on those guys?
oh, they hate me.
Do they?
I mean, Shalene probably doesn't. I've been friends with
She does
Shalene.
not. She does
No,
not.
I mean, she's been on my show. I have mad respect for Miss Shalene,
Yeah.
definitely.
Us too.
Shalene, yeah. But the other four, I'm pretty sure, they
Well,
don't-
there's a new one that just came on now, right?
Not yet. No, one left.
One's
recently.
leaving.
There's an
Yeah.
opening actually,
Oh, right. There's an opening, right?
and I'm
Sorry.
applying for it. So we'll see.
Oh, good.
So did you
I don't
make
think
that
I'm gonna get
did you make that decision? You're going to go through with it?
I am, which is crazy because it's like
Awesome.
a 25-page application going
Yeah.
through every job I ever worked, every story I ever wrote. It's like,
Wow.
Jesus Christ. And I know I'm probably not going to get it because, politicians don't,
Yeah.
the ones in charge anyways. But, I do have some political support. A lot of the people that came on our show, they're offering letters
Yeah.
of recommendations, and the community behind me. I think I'll be the first one that applies that actually has the community support. So I think that'll be different versus the corporate support and the lobbyist
Right.
support and the institutional government support.
Mhm.
We'll see.
I would be excited about that because then we're going to have a commissioner on every month, right?
I would come back. I would definitely do that.
So do you think you'd have to let go some of the things that you're doing for yourself now? If
I'm
that,
sure. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, that's one of the things that kind of drives me crazy looking at it. I'm like, I'm kind of happy doing what am I like, I have a dog, Carmelita, and I run a dog care business. I love it. Like, honestly, it's the best thing. And then I just do my media. I have no boss in the media. Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? I've people like, why don't you go try to work for the Globe or go try to work
Yeah.
at Entercom? No, I don't want to do that shit.
Yeah.
I just do what I want.
Because you're basically applying to be a politician, right? Obviously,
I
you're
know,
not.
right?
I mean,
Which
that's
I said I would never ever friggin' do.
right. But I admire that. I think you would be a great voice on this commission. Unfortunately, you may not like, but to be a politician is that it's very hard. But you might have to lose some of your. I mean, that's the name of the game. You have to like somehow release a little bit of your
The edge.
own edge.
I know.
And your own. I mean, I don't want to say the word biased, but it's just like there's like a motivation and a direction, because if you're not neutral, then there could be a very important case that you are, morally and ethically conflicted with. And as a little of your guard.
Oh, I've been thinking about that the last couple of days.
Yeah.
Like, it's just because when I was at Mass Can Normal for 10 years. I booked most of the freedom rallies. I was like it's funny because Mass Can has like a left wing and a right wing, and I would kind of be the guy that would bring everyone together back in the day.
What's Mass Can? Can you just, because I'm new to this, what is that?
The local organization that runs the Freedom Rally, also known as the Hemp Fest.
You were the director of them for a bit, weren't you?
I was a director on the board of directors for 10 years. That's really how I got into this. And I started booking a lot of their music events. That's how I met Carmelita.
Mhm.
I raised a lot of money for them. I did a lot of organizing. I did a lot of the politics stuff.
Mhm.
And I, just started, I started a blog, mycan.net. I did a lot. And then I started booking the Freedom Rally, and I became their president. And towards the end, I felt like a politician.
Mhm.
And I got away from bringing people together.
Mhm.
It became really political, and there was a lot of backstabbing that happened to me, and I don't think I handled it that well, honestly.
Yeah.
It was a tough position to be in, and I left. And ever since I left, I've been totally independent, and it felt like, I'll never be a people have always like, you should run for office. No, you should do this. And it's like, no, I just want to be independent, do my own thing. But now
you're completely contradicting everything you just said to us.
Yeah, now I'm considering this, and it's like, why? Because everyone
tell us why.
You got to do this. You have to at least try. I feel like medical has been just thrown by the wayside. So many medical patients have been left behind. There's not enough help for medical patients. The access is still wrong. The cost is still too much. There's just so many issues there. So I feel like, and another part of me feels like too, like, I can't like bag on the Cannabis Control Commission, and even some of the criticism I gave a little criticism even to Shalene, who I love. I can't do that if I don't at least try to throw my hat in the ring. I can't say what, Governor Baker and AG Hilly, they're just so corporate. They always try for the they always pick these corporate people and put them on this board without actually applying. You know, because when I really looked at it, we were going to back a couple other people. Like as a community, we've been thinking about this. We've been talking about this. Like, who are we going to try to get on there when the first person leaves? And we had someone we wanted, you know, who's on my show, Grant Smith. You know, but it turns out Grant's not qualified this time. It has to be an unenrolled voter. It has to be someone who has financial experience.
Just to clarify what you just said, it doesn't have to be an unenrolled voter. There's a ratio. It can't be basically 5 people who are registered Democrats. There has to be a ratio.
Thank you for correcting me. So basically, right now there's 3 Democrats on there.
Good job, Eric.
Well, and Shalene is the only other independent, right? Is that correct?
And so basically,
unenrolled, yeah.
But Shalene are Democrats. So the next person has to be someone who's not a Democrat. You know, whether I get the job or not, it's like this would actually be me really stepping up to the plate. And another thing I would love about it is I'd be the first commissioner to be like, I use cannabis every friggin' day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, don't you think you need someone on the Cannabis Control Commission that actually loves it and uses it?
Just submitting that application is going to change you, right? It's gonna at least shift your way of thinking, because you're basically saying, I am opening myself up to thinking a little bit more open-mindedly than I have maybe in the last decade. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's a weird position for me too, because now, you know, I'm used to the politicians asking me for stuff. Yeah. You know, once in a while I might ask them to come on the show, like the big ones, but mostly now they're asking me for, you know, can you support this? Can I come on your show? Can I talk about this?
Yeah.
And now I'm asking them. I'm like, can you write me a letter of recommendation? Yeah. So it's kind of weird. Who are some of
the people that you're asking for a recommendation? Would you feel comfortable naming them?
Some can and they can't. Like, you know, ask Tito Jackson, who I like a lot.
Yeah. Who was the runner-up? He was the person who was running against Marty Walsh, right? Yeah.
Probably why Mayor Walsh will never come on my show.
Because you backed Tito?
Yeah, because I backed Tito.
Yeah. I mean, was that even to be honest though, was that even a race?
What is it?
Was there a chance for Tito to ever beat Marty Walsh, do you think?
Not really. The Buck media didn't give him a chance. But
no, they didn't.
The thing is, I think Tito got more votes than people expected. I think he did a lot better than people expected with the little amount of money. And what we noted, too, is that, you know, when Tito came on our show a few times, the numbers went through the roof. Like, we were doing, 500, 1,000 views or whatever. Yeah. And those episodes were getting like 5, 10, 15,000. We're like, wow. And Mayor Walsh saw it. And next thing you know, for the first time in his life, Mayor Walsh was like, I'm not getting in the way of these dispensaries.
Yeah.
And then Tito came back on the show and was like, you guys, this show has like changed policy in the city of Boston. And I was like, wow. Like,
and again, just to bring it back to the KMS world, because obviously that's what we're a part of. But the opportunity that Kirk and Steve has given us to be able to produce this show has also sort of given, Scott and I a chance to really explore a lot of these topics and a lot of these ideas, and both personally and professionally. I've enjoyed this process up to this point, and you're a role model of mine now, man. So like, I'm so happy that you reached out, because I'm going to follow your shit now, and I'm definitely going to tag you, and I hope you'll come back on our show when you have more to share.
I love that. You guys have, honestly, I don't do a lot of, I get a lot of requests, but usually I don't do them. Just because I feel like a lot of times I'm like, this isn't going to be a show I want to do. And I could tell right away, because, someone told me I should definitely do this. So I looked into it. But once I talked, we started going back and forth on Twitter. I knew it was going to be good, but tonight was, cool. I loved it. This was really good. I like the Super Lemon Haze show. I'll definitely give you guys a thumbs up, and I've enjoyed it.
We appreciate it, Mike. Yeah, we'd love to talk a little bit more get into some more in-depth conversations about some of these other pieces that you're investigating, and obviously your journey in the CCC. If that goes on, we'd love to keep talking to you about that, my friend.
All right, Mike. We're gonna let you go. Thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you, Scott and Eric. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks, right, Mike.
We'll talk to you.
Thanks. Bye.
Nice.
Yeah. Solid. Interesting guy. And again, just to reiterate, really, I think he resold me a little bit on that piece about the unions and being just so so socialist, so liberal there. I'm not. That's one piece where I may. I go a bit more conservative, and to hear, when it comes back to the idea again, back to the same old piece, Eric, about the federal not supporting this industry. What choice do they have, man? What choice do they have?
Well, hopefully next week we'll be back in studio. If not, we'll figure that out.
Yeah,
So,
have fun editing this fucking long ass podcast,
God.
bro. Sorry.
2 hours. It's almost 2 hours. The longest
I
we've
feel
ever
like we
had.
covered some good content though, and I'm sure I'm sure you got to do your thing, but we'll be all right, I guess.
All right. Peace, everyone. Thanks for hanging on. We'll talk to you next time.
Super Lemon Haze.
Super Lemon Haze, motherfucker.
What is this?
Is it over?
We're running out of time.
I don't want to hear your excuses. No, it's not fair. Where'd all the files go?